The British Empire, a vast and complex entity, spanned centuries and continents. It left an indelible mark on the world. From the Americas to Asia, Africa to Oceania, British influence shaped landscapes, societies, and systems of governance. This essay delves into the history of Great Britain's global conquests. It explores the rise and fall of this empire, examining key events and legacies. The story begins with early colonization efforts in the New World. The establishment of Jamestown, Virginia in 1607 marked the beginning of a new era. It ignited a race for colonies and resources. This competition pitted Britain against European rivals like Spain and France. Over the centuries, the British Empire grew in size and influence. It reached its peak in the 19th century, encompassing a quarter of the world's landmass and population. This expansion was driven by a complex interplay of factors. These included economic ambitions, strategic considerations, and a belief in British superiority. However, the seeds of the empire's decline were sown even as it reached its zenith. The 20th century witnessed the rise of nationalism and anti-colonial movements. These forces challenged the very foundations of imperial rule. By the end of the century, the British Empire had largely dissolved. It left behind a legacy of both progress and exploitation, unity and division. The early 17th century witnessed the first tentative steps of English colonization. The establishment of Jamestown, Virginia in 1607 marked a pivotal moment. Driven by a desire for land, resources, and religious freedom, English settlers began to carve out a new life in the Americas. The early years were fraught with challenges. Disease, starvation, and conflict with indigenous populations were constant threats. Yet the colony persevered, fueled by tobacco cultivation and the arrival of new settlers. Jamestown's success paved the way for further English expansion along the Atlantic coast. As the English colonies grew, so too did their economic and political importance. The triangular trade, involving the exchange of slaves, raw materials, and manufactured goods, enriched the British economy. The colonies provided a valuable source of raw materials and a captive market for British goods. However, the relationship between Britain and its American colonies was not without its tensions. The imposition of taxes and trade restrictions by the British government fueled resentment among the colonists. This simmering discontent would eventually erupt into open rebellion. The American Revolution from 1775 to 1783 marked a turning point in the history of the British Empire. It challenged the very notion of colonial rule and had far-reaching consequences. The revolution was ignited by a complex web of grievances, including taxation without representation, restrictions on colonial trade, and British military presence in the colonies. The colonists, inspired by Enlightenment ideals of liberty and self-government, took up arms against British rule. The Declaration of Independence, adopted on July 4, 1776, proclaimed the colony's secession from Great Britain and articulated the principles of equality and natural rights. The war itself was a protracted and bloody affair. The colonists, though outnumbered and outgunned, benefited from their familiarity with the terrain, strong leadership, and the support of foreign powers such as France. The British, bogged down in a distant land and facing a determined enemy, ultimately suffered defeat. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, formally recognized the independence of the United States of America. This momentous event sent shockwaves throughout the world, inspiring other colonial subjects to challenge imperial rule. Despite the loss of the American colonies, the British Empire continued to expand throughout the 19th century. Driven by a combination of economic, strategic, and ideological factors, Britain acquired vast territories in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. The Industrial Revolution fueled a demand for raw materials and new markets, leading to the acquisition of colonies rich in resources such as cotton, tea, and rubber. Strategic considerations also played a significant role in British expansion. The need to secure trade routes, protect British interests abroad, and counter the ambitions of rival European powers drove the acquisition of territories in key locations. For instance, the establishment of colonies in South Africa and Egypt was motivated by a desire to control the sea route to India, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. The 19th century also witnessed the rise of a potent ideology known as imperialism. It was often used to justify British expansion. Proponents of imperialism argued that it was Britain's duty to spread civilization, Christianity, and good governance to the uncivilized parts of the world. This sense of mission was often accompanied by a belief in the superiority of British culture and institutions. Section 5. The legal legacy, from Norman conquest to global influence. The Norman conquest of 1066 had a profound and lasting impact on the development of English law. William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, introduced a new legal system based on Norman feudalism. This system blended with Anglo-Saxon customary law, creating the foundation for the common law system that would eventually spread throughout the British Empire. The Norman conquest led to the establishment of royal courts. These courts gradually asserted their authority over local courts. The king's judges travelled throughout the realm, hearing cases and developing a body of precedent that formed the basis of common law. Over time, a hierarchy of courts emerged, culminating in the Court of King's Bench and the Court of Common Pleas. The development of English law was further shaped by the emergence of legal professions. The Inns of Court in London became centres of legal education and training. Aspiring lawyers would live and study at the inns, learning through a combination of lectures, debates, and apprenticeships. This system fostered a sense of shared identity and professional standards among English lawyers. Section 6. The Mandate System and the Middle East. The aftermath of World War I saw the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the emergence of a new world order. The League of Nations, established in 1920, created a mandate system to oversee the administration of former Ottoman territories. Britain, as a victorious power, was granted mandates over Palestine, Transjordan and Mesopotamia, which is later known as Iraq. The British mandate in Palestine proved to be particularly challenging and consequential. It was tasked with implementing the Balfour Declaration of 1917, which promised to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, while safeguarding the rights of existing non-Jewish communities. This dual mandate proved to be unworkable. As Jewish immigration increased, tensions between Jewish and Arab communities escalated, leading to violence and unrest. Despite efforts to find a peaceful solution, the situation in Palestine deteriorated. The British government, facing growing pressure from both sides and its own domestic concerns, decided to relinquish its mandate in 1948. The withdrawal of British forces paved the way for the creation of the State of Israel and the subsequent Arab-Israeli conflict. Section 7. Challenges to imperial rule, the winds of change. The 20th century witnessed the rise of powerful forces that challenged the very foundations of the British Empire. Nationalism, fueled by a desire for self-determination and independence, swept across the globe, inspiring resistance movements in colonies from India to Africa. World War II, while ultimately ending in Allied victory, significantly weakened Great Britain both militarily and economically. The war effort exhausted British resources and manpower, making it increasingly difficult to maintain control over its vast empire. Moreover, the war had a profound impact on the global balance of power, with the United States and the Soviet Union emerging as the dominant superpowers. The rise of the United States as a global power presented both opportunities and challenges for Great Britain. On the one hand, the two nations shared a common language, culture, and commitment to democracy. On the other hand, the United States, with its vast economic and military might, often pursued policies that ran counter to British interests. Section 8. The decline of the British Empire, a legacy of complexity. The decline of the British Empire was a gradual and complex process. It was shaped by a confluence of factors including the rise of nationalism, economic challenges, and changing global dynamics. The process of decolonization, which began in earnest after World War II, saw the granting of independence to former colonies in Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. India, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, gained independence in 1947. This momentous event, accompanied by the partition of India and Pakistan, marked a turning point in the history of decolonization. It set in motion a chain of events that would lead to the dismantling of the British Empire. The legacy of the British Empire is a complex and contested one. On the one hand, British rule brought about significant advances in infrastructure, education, and administration in many parts of the world. On the other hand, colonialism also resulted in exploitation, cultural disruption, and the suppression of indigenous populations. Section 9. Conclusion. The British Empire, once a vast and powerful entity, has receded into the annals of history. Its legacy, however, continues to shape the world we live in today. From the languages we speak to the legal systems we inherit, the impact of British colonialism is profound and enduring. Understanding the history of the British Empire is essential for comprehending the complexities of the modern world. It offers insights into the roots of global inequality, the challenges of post-colonial societies, and the enduring legacies of imperialism. As we grapple with the challenges of the 21st century, it is imperative to learn from the past and strive towards a more just and equitable world.